Hello and welcome to The Issue. I'm Justin Chenette. Today's episode kicks off an ongoing series exploring all of the primary candidates running for District 1 U.S. Representative, only on The Issue. My guest is Republican congressional candidate Dean Scontras. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Great. Let's begin with the fundamental question.
Sure.
Why are you running for U.S. Representative?
That's a great question and one that's often asked. And I will tell you, I'm an outsider. I've never run for office before. And I think generally if you look at congressional approval ratings, even if you look at the approval ratings at our state legislature here in Augusta, people are generally sick and tired of the status quo. Congress has approval ratings that are around 14%, and I think it's time for people that come of, by, and for the people, as the Founding Fathers thought it to be, especially in the House of Representatives, where you have to have a sympathy for the people and understand what they're going through. I just think Congress and government has become a career for some folks. Everybody I'm running against in this race is a lifetime politician. We were talking off the set here before about Obama. I don't agree with him on any of his policy pieces, but I think he's tapped into something. Is that you got to wonder what the motivation is for somebody who's spent a career in Washington, D.C. I'm an outsider. I've got young children, and quite frankly, I'm concerned about their future. I'm concerned about the economic future, certainly in the national security situation, and our failure to resolve some of our biggest problems in the country. So,
what sets you apart from your opponents?
Oh, my opponents in the primary, which I'll talk about a lot. One is my background. I've been in business for 15 years, right? I'm truly an outsider. I think I've been around the state, and I've got the support of over 70 business leaders. 70 business leaders have actually endorsed my candidacy, and that's significant because here in Maine, if you look at Maine, Forbes magazine ranks us 48th as far as being business friendly. So there's 47 other states ahead of Maine, and that's significant. We're the second most taxed state in the country, and the business leaders here are struggling. They're going to bring their jobs elsewhere if things don't get radically better. And quite frankly, everybody I'm running against, Republican and Democrat in this race, has helped foster the poor economic climate we live in. So when I go meet with business leaders, they're encouraged that somebody from business is running, who understands what it's like to sign the front of the check, the back of the check, and understand the economic climate, and be able to talk about those issues that are important to them. So I think that's one thing, is my business background and the fact that I've actually got endorsements from 65 business leaders. I mean, the top of the list is the former CEO and chairman of TD Bank North. I think, secondly, the fact that I am an outsider is very encouraging. I had one dairy farmer up in Augusta ask me a question. He said, "Have you ever served in Washington, D.C.?" And I said, "Nope." He goes, "You ever served in Augusta?" And I said, "Nope, because I'll vote for you then." And I think if you look across the country, there's really a spirit of change. And I think it's hard to try to make change when you've been part of the establishment. So, I mean, there's significant policy differences, too, between myself and my competitor in the primary. I've come pretty hard down on illegal immigration. It's a huge problem in the country. It's costing us money. There's a national security component to it. I'm pro-life. He's not. So there's some significant differences, not only between who we are and where we stand on the issues. Also, I grew up here in Maine. My father grew up in Old Orchard Beach. 3 generations deep in Maine. I think that's significant. When you're the only Mainer in the state, you move back because you want your kids to experience, the summers and the winters and the 4 seasons. So I think, you look at the issues, you look at who I am and why I'm running, and you look at our own biographies, and I think it's significantly different, a big contrast.
Let's turn to those specific issues, starting with
Sure.
the Iraq War. It is stated on your website that you call the Iraq War, quote, a failure to describe the mission, a failure to communicate the importance of the mission, a failure to execute the mission, and yet you don't support an immediate troop withdrawal.
Yeah.
What is your plan and strategy for Iraq?
That's a good, that was written prior to the General Petraeus and Ryan Crocker testimony back in September.
Okay.
I will give you, that was my concern leading up to that testimony. I've always qualified it by saying, let's wait till Petraeus gets back, let's wait till Crocker gets back. And sure enough, what they said then was very encouraging and supported the subsequent surge and the success thereof and thereafter. That being said, I think everybody, a year ago was concerned about how it was going. And I think the administration was slow to take on some of the suggestions of the Iraq Study Group. One was if the commanders in the field wanted a surge, we should give it to them. And sure enough, I think what I heard Crocker and Petraeus say is that security in Iraq is very closely coupled to political milestones. And let's face it, whether you're talking about de-Baathification, reconciliation, they're doing what we did, right, when we founded a country. They're doing what we did when we, after the Civil War and Reconstruction. Those are significant political milestones. It can't be measured in just years or days. So we've got to stand by them. If you think that, the process of making these two sides, which truly have been at war for such a long time, that's a hard process to get through. We took a long time here in this country. We need to be a little more patient. Also, I don't think we can pull out because I think the consequence is also too great. We know Iran is very ambitious in the region. They would move in, most certainly, to try to stir things up as well. I don't think economic markets or even political markets react well to that sort of instability. So I'm trying to get around the fact of how we got there and what the situation was. I mean, this drumbeat really started back in 1998 when George Bush was still the governor of Texas. The House and the Senate overwhelmingly voted for a regime change. And why? They cited a lot of the same statistics that this administration had. So I'd like to put the squabbling behind me, focus on what we can do now. I don't think war is a success anytime you enter into it. It certainly is. It's a collapse of everything. Your economic sanctions. It's a collapse of negotiations, diplomatic, political. It means there was no other option. And I think if you go back and you look at the steps, whether we should have done it or shouldn't have done it, I can't get into that. But we're there, and right now I could not support a timetable for withdrawal.
Then where do we go from here?
Well, I think the progress is significant. Certainly the violence is down. I think, looking out over the next 12 to 24 months, I don't think you can say, this is when we should get out or this is when we have to be out. Once again, it's very closely coupled to the de-Baathification and reconciliation process. And, these are folks who lived under tyranny for 40 years. Literally, I mean, it was a very egregious sort of tyranny. We know the genocide that took place. We know that how people were intimidated to going along with the Baathists. I don't think there can be a timetable put upon that. It's really going to be something that we're engaged in now, and we're going to have to stay in for the time being. And hopefully, democracy will flourish, and that will give hope to people in the region and throughout the world.
Being a Washington outsider, what makes you qualified to handle matters of foreign policy?
Well, I was going to resort to the Federalist Papers because I knew you were going to ask this question. And this comes specifically from Federalist Paper number 53. So I'm at a high school, so I thought I'd bring my Federalist Papers. So these were written in support of the Constitution. It says, "No man can be a competent legislator who does not add an upright intention and sound judgment, a certain degree of knowledge of the subjects on which he is to legislate. A part of this knowledge may be acquired by means of information which lie within the compass of men private as well as public stations." The point is you do copious amounts of work on international, even domestic issues about this. I think, quite frankly, it's a strength of mine, understanding truly the struggle in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, what U.S. foreign policy has been in the past. Actually, I think academically, I'm stronger than almost everybody else in this race about that. I did go to graduate school for public policy. I went to undergraduate school for public policy, and have been a pretty astute observer of the situation. I think one of the problems we have with the Middle East in general is really trying to fit our answers into 20-second sound bites. I mean, this is a struggle that's been with mankind for a long time, and the failure to truly talk about these situations, even whether it's, I say, Israel and Palestine, and understand all the moving parts and all the factions, is something that needs to come out in debate. So I think you're probably onto something when you say, "Hey, business guy, what would he know about foreign policy?" That's why I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate the debate I'm going to have tonight, because I think it's important to say, where does Dean Scontras stand on these important issues in the Middle East?
Okay, let's turn to border security.
Sure.
Do you support tightening our southern border with Mexico with a border fence and National Guard troops?
Yeah, I would say, the border fence, first of all, if you paid attention last summer, the bill that was on the floor of the House and the Senate went down. I mean, the biggest piece to that was the amnesty bill, or
right.
portion of the bill. The promise sort of after the fact was that they were going to build a fence on the southern border. In December, essentially in the middle of the night, the United States Congress passed a $555 billion omnibus spending package. Out of that, they pulled the funding for the border fence. and gave themselves a 4% pay raise. Once again, a reason why an outsider is running. The elitists in Washington, D.C. decided not to listen to the people of Maine. We know a fence will work. It's worked on the border in California. It's worked actually in between Palestine and Israel, where Israel constructed a very humane fence that has reduced suicide bombing significantly within Israel. Almost, I think, almost by 90% or so. You very rarely hear about suicide bombings in Israel. So we know that it will work. Whether you need to complement it with national security or with reservists, I'm not sure.